In Armenia's Kotayk province, at approximately 40.11 degrees north and 44.72 degrees east, a structure stands in defiance of its own timeline. This is the Garni Temple, a puzzle box of basalt perched on the edge of a dramatic gorge. Officially, the narrative is straightforward. It is a 1st-century Ionic temple, likely built by King Tiridates I, with funds from a visit to Emperor Nero in Rome, and dedicated to the sun god Mir. It is, factually, the only standing Greco-Roman colonnaded building in the entirety of the former Soviet Union. It was also completely rebuilt between 1969 and 1975, a meticulous Soviet project to resurrect the structure from the rubble of a 1679 earthquake. And that is where the simple story ends. The anomaly is not in the temple itself, but in what it stands on. During the reconstruction, lead-sealed iron clamps were found holding the massive basalt blocks of the foundation together. This technique is not Roman. It is signature engineering of the Urartian kingdom, a civilization that dominated this region over 600 years before the first Roman legionary arrived. The architect of the reconstruction, Alexander Sahinian, was the first to formally propose that the temple was built atop a much older Urartian royal structure or temple. His forensic analysis of the platform's masonry suggested it was a distinct, earlier build phase. Mainstream historiography remains skeptical, citing the lack of any definitive Urartian cuneiform on the foundation stones. But this is a land where history is layered, like geological strata. The absence of a signature does not invalidate the physical evidence of the engineering. It forces a more fundamental question. If a Roman-style temple was deliberately placed on the foundations of a forgotten power, was it an act of dominance or of appropriation? And if it happened here, how much of Armenia's accepted history is just the top layer? In Armenia's Sunik province, at approximately 39.55 degrees north and 46.02 degrees east, the question of layered history we encountered at Garni becomes almost quaint. A 600-year discrepancy is one thing. Pushing the timeline back by over 7 millennia is another. This is Karahunj, or Zorat's Karer, a name popularly translated as the Speaking Stones. The site is a sprawling arrangement of 223 massive basalt megaliths spread across a windswept plateau, some weighing up to 10 tons. Officially, the Armenian Institute of Archaeology dates the complex to the Middle Bronze Age, around 2000 BCE, classifying it primarily as a necropolis and settlement. But the anomaly here isn't buried in the foundations, it's drilled right through the stones themselves. 84 of the megaliths have perfectly circular apertures, 4 to 5 centimeters in diameter, bored through their upper sections. The mainstream explanation is that they were used for transport or structural lashing. A far more disruptive theory, however, was put forward in the 1980s by radiophysicist Paris Hirouni. He conducted a series of expeditions and concluded that Karahunj was not a graveyard, but a prehistoric astronomical observatory. His calculations suggested that specific holes align with the rising, setting, and culmination points of the sun, moon, and key stars. Critically, he claimed a direct alignment to the star Deneb in the constellation Cygnus, but as it would have appeared in the sky approximately 7,500 years ago, this predates the main Sarsen structures of Stonehenge by 3,000 years, and the Egyptian pyramids by a similar margin. The academic establishment remains largely unconvinced, citing a lack of corroborating evidence and the difficulty of proving such ancient sightlines. But the stones remain. They are a physical dataset, and the holes are a deliberate modification. If they are not for observation, what is their function? If they are, it fundamentally rewrites the entire chronology of sophisticated astronomical practice. It suggests a civilization was mapping the cosmos from this plateau when most of humanity was just beginning to experiment with settled agriculture. The stones are silent on the matter, leaving only the data. In Armenia's Gegarkunik province, scattered across the high-altitude volcanic landscapes near 40.25 degrees north and 45.00 degrees east, the data left by ancient peoples becomes less about the cosmos and more about control. While the stones of Karahunj may have been pointed at the stars, another set of megaliths was firmly focused on the ground. These are the Vishapakars, or as they are more commonly known, the dragon stones. The name is a medieval attribution. Their original designation is lost. Over 150 of these stelae have been found, some reaching 5 meters in height and carved from a single block of stone. They date primarily to the 2nd millennium BCE. The iconography is strangely specific and repeated. Most are carved in the shape of a fish, often with a bull's hide draped over them, and in some cases, streams of water are depicted flowing from the bull's mouth. They are almost exclusively found near mountain springs, the sources of rivers, and the remains of ancient irrigation canals. The prevailing theory is that they were idols in a forgotten water cult, but this explanation feels incomplete. The sheer effort of carving and erecting these monoliths in remote, difficult terrain suggests a function beyond simple worship. They feel less like idols and more like instruments. For a Bronze Age culture, they were remarkably concerned with water management, or at least, that's what carving a 5-meter-tall legal document into a mountain seems to imply. Were these territorial markers delineating access to the most vital resource in a dry landscape? Or were they part of the system itself, a schematic for a network of canals we can no longer trace? This consistent iconography suggests a widespread, regulated system, a language of hydrology written in stone. If you find this forensic approach to decoding ancient landscapes compelling, consider subscribing to our channel as we continue to assemble the evidence. But these monuments, dedicated to the life-giving force of water, are not the only cryptic legacy left in the highlands. A far more intimate and unsettling record of prehistoric belief was being kept inside Armenia's caves. That unsettling record is found here in Armenia's Veyats Zor province at approximately 39.73 degrees north, 45.20 degrees east, deep within the Areni-1 cave complex. While the dragonstones stood exposed to the elements, this parallel culture was developing in the stable 15 degrees Celsius environment of a karst cave system. Initial excavations here uncovered what became headline-grabbing artifacts: the world's oldest known leather shoe, a 500-year-old moccasin, and more significantly, the world's oldest winery. Dated to 100 years ago, this was not a small batch operation. Shallow basins for pressing grapes, fermentation vats, and storage jars, along with preserved grape seeds and skins, point to a Chalcolithic society with a sophisticated understanding of viticulture. But the wine was not simply for leisure. Deeper in the cave, in a dedicated ritual space, archaeologists found something else. Inside 3 separate ceramic vessels were 3 human skulls. Forensic analysis confirmed they belonged to adolescents, 2 female and 1 of undetermined sex, all between the ages of 12 and 14. There are no cut marks, no evidence of violence or cannibalism. The skulls were carefully prepared post-mortem and intentionally interred. This was not a burial. It was an installation. The proximity of a large-scale wine production facility to a site of ritual skull deposition is statistically improbable to be a coincidence. The evidence suggests a highly organized funerary cult, one that used wine not just as a beverage, but as a psychoactive sacrament to commune with the recently departed. These were not just skulls in jars. They were the focal point of a ceremony, a bridge to an afterlife powered by industrialized fermentation. Yet as old as these 6,000-year-old rituals are, they are not the beginning of the story. New evidence suggests that the origins of complex monumental construction in this part of the world may be twice as old. The search for that origin point, for a structure twice as old as the Areni-1 rituals, brings us here to Armenia's Aragatsonan province at approximately 40.46 degrees north, 44.29 degrees east. The site is a low hill known as Karasar, but the investigation is codenamed after an enigma, Portasar. In Armenian, Portasar means naval mountain, a direct translation of Göbekli Tepe, the 12,000-year-old temple complex in modern-day Turkey that reset our understanding of human history. The question driving the current excavation by a joint Armenian-Polish archaeological team is whether Karasar represents a parallel or even a predecessor to that revolution in human organization. The evidence is still emerging from the soil, but what has been found is provocative. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed subsurface anomalies consistent with large, non-domestic structures. Initial digs have uncovered circular buildings and monumental stone stelae, pillars erected for purposes that were clearly not residential. Radiocarbon dating of organic material from the lowest strata places the site firmly within the pre-pottery Neolithic period, between the 9th and 8th millennia BCE. This is precisely the same time frame as Göbekli Tepe. Like its more famous counterpart, Karasar shows a near-total absence of household artifacts or signs of permanent settlement. The data suggests this was not a place where people lived, but a place they came to. It was a regional center for ritual, a vast undertaking by a society of hunter-gatherers who, according to previous models, should not have had the social structure or logistical capacity for monumental architecture. The enigma is therefore not simply about stone and dating. It's about information. Was there a network of such temple sites? A cultural and ideological transmission that flowed across the highlands 12,000 years ago? Or did disparate groups of humans, separated by hundreds of kilometers, independently arrive at the same extraordinary idea at the same time? This 12,000-year-old blueprint for civilization would be buried by millennia of soil and memory. The next time a grand vision would be imposed on this landscape, it wouldn't be a temple for unseen gods, but a sprawling capital for a very visible king. A king built his city in the historical Artsakh region at approximately 40.09 degrees north, 46.94 degrees east. This is Tigranocerta, or rather, it was. Today, it is a forbidden city. King Tigranes II, called the Great, ruled an empire in the 1st century BCE that briefly made Armenia the most powerful state east of the Roman Republic. To consolidate his power and project a new, Hellenized culture, he founded at least 4 cities bearing his name. This one, established around 80 BCE, was a statement. Excavations, which began in 2005, revealed the scale of his ambition. We have the data. 5-meter-thick fortification walls enclosing an area of over 50 hectares, a central district with columned halls, and a lower city sprawling across the Kecheneged River Valley. Archaeologists uncovered a 5th century basilica, but its foundations rested on an earlier pagan temple, a familiar pattern of cultural overriding. But the most critical statistic about Tigranocerta is not its age or size, but a date, 2020. After the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War, the site became inaccessible. The Armenian archaeological mission was terminated, and the region's Armenian population was displaced. All ongoing research stopped. What we know about the city is based solely on the data and artifacts extracted before that point. It is a rare case of a major classical site being lost to science, not in antiquity, but in our own time. The project's lead archaeologist now analyzes his own findings from a distance, a curator of a city he can no longer visit. Ground-penetrating surveys from before the conflict suggest the excavated areas represent less than 15% of the total urban footprint. The necropolis, the suburbs, and the industrial quarters all remain unverified, buried under soil and a newly drawn line on a map. The story of Tigranocerta is no longer just about uncovering a king's vision. It is about the preservation of knowledge itself when access is denied. In the Sunik province, at approximately 39.69 degrees north, 46.05 degrees east, lies a library whose books are made of stone. Here, the text is complete, laid out before us, yet written in a language we have entirely forgotten. This is Urtasar, at an altitude of 300 meters, accessible for less than 3 months a year due to extreme snowpack. thousands of dark volcanic boulders are scattered around a glacial lake. Carved onto them are over 2,000 individual panels containing tens of thousands of petroglyphs. The dating is a problem in itself, with estimates ranging from the Paleolithic era to the dawn of the Iron Age. It is not one library, but a collection of volumes written over millennia. The iconography is deceptively simple. We can catalog the subjects: geometric shapes, humanoids in dance-like postures, and animals. The sheer statistical prevalence of the goat motif, specifically the bezoar goat, reflects an obsession that spans generations of carvers. They account for over half of all zoomorphic figures. This is not art for art's sake. This is data storage. Some researchers propose these are hunting calendars or maps. One specific glyph is a plausible topographical rendering of the surrounding peaks and the lake itself. Others suggest they are shamanistic visions, a record of altered states of consciousness. The problem is that all of these hypotheses are equally unprovable. The glyphs are a complete dataset without a cipher key. The information is not hidden from view. It is right there, baked by the high-altitude sun, frozen for 9 months of the year, waiting for a Rosetta Stone that will likely never arrive. It is the ultimate prehistoric cold case. The story is not lost. We have simply lost the ability to read it. In Turkey's Agri province, at approximately 39.70 degrees north, 44.26 degrees east, stands a mountain held as a national symbol by neighboring Armenia. This is Mount Ararat, and a feature near its summit has been the subject of speculation for decades. The Ararat anomaly is a specific, recurring object observed in high-resolution satellite and aerial imagery. Located on the northwest corner of the Western Plateau at an altitude of 4,724 meters, it appears as a dark, elongated shape embedded in the ice. It was first documented in a U.S. Air Force aerial reconnaissance mission in 1949 and subsequently became a subject of interest for Cold War-era surveillance programs. The images were classified for decades. Following their declassification under the Freedom of Information Act, they revealed a structure-like object approximately 183 meters in length. This presents a problem of scale. The biblical specification for Noah's Ark is a length of 300 cubits, which translates to roughly 137 meters. The anomaly is nearly a third larger than the object it is purported to be. The Defense Intelligence Agency has analyzed the data, concluding the feature is likely a linear formation of glacial ice. Yet interest persists, fueled by the fact that the area is a highly restricted military zone on the Turkish border. Access for expeditions is almost universally denied. A major attempt in 2004 was blocked by Turkish authorities, citing security concerns. The anomaly remains a paradox, an object cataloged by spy planes and satellites, yet never physically examined by a credited scientific team. For Armenia, it is the ultimate phantom limb, the nation's most sacred symbol, visible from its capital, yet holding its secrets just across a sealed border.